Hello, and welcome to a Season 1 episode of Beyond Teaching, a new series featured on the PsychSessions network. This series is hosted by Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University, Adelinka Akinseler-Smith from City College of New York, City University of New York, Asani Sewell from Pacific University, and yours truly, Eric Landrum from Boise State University. Through informal discussions and email exchanges, what we discovered and agreed upon is that to be a successful academic or professional, it takes more than teaching, research, or clinical skills. That is, today's psychology professionals were not taught everything they need to know in graduate school. How do you find a mentor in your career path? And what do you do if that mentoring relationship turns sour? What are the strategies for dealing with Zoom fatigue, both for you and your students? How do you learn to say no, whether that is for a job offer, a student's letter of recommendation request, or a potential committee assignment? How do you choose what journal to submit your work to, and how do you deal with cranky reviewers? These topics and more are discussed in the Season 1 episodes that are now being released spring and summer of 2021. In future seasons, we'll be inviting guest experts to join us, and we have a host of topics to discuss regarding areas of our jobs that no one ever prepared us for. Now, I don't mean that to sound cranky or anything, but there really is a lot that no one ever told us, right? And so that's what this podcast is all about, taking us beyond teaching. So welcome to another episode of Beyond Teaching. We're thrilled to be here with you. I'm Eric Landrum.
I'm Yinka Kinchler-Smith.
I'm Asani Sewell.
And I'm Susan Nolan.
And so what are we going to talk about today, colleagues?
Let's talk about how to find a mentor. Something that I think a lot of us get asked all the time.
Very important.
Mm-hmm.
When I started at Seton Hall University, that was a bit of a struggle for me initially because we now actually have a formal mentoring program set up, which is wonderful. People are assigned a couple of mentors, but there wasn't anything like that at the time. And I really wished that somebody had told me that I could just, go to someone in my department and ask, would you be my mentor? I ended up finding mentors in a different department. I got involved with our women's studies program, which is now a women and gender studies program, and ended up finding mentors in a number of different disciplines. And once I had a couple of people offer to mentor me, I discovered that you can ask people. You can say, can I bring you out for a coffee and pick your brain? I'm looking, and finding someone outside your department is amazing because you get a perspective that you don't think you would get. I don't think you would get otherwise.
I think that making the ask is a great way to go about it. I think people are very willing. When I first started off in my first faculty position at Grinnell College, I asked the dean of the college if I could be assigned a mentor, and I started there. And she did wind up assigning me someone that was in my department, but I made that ask to her because I didn't know where to start. And I think the thing that I recall is that when I was assigned this particular mentor, great mentor, by the way, Dr. David Lopato, love David Lopato. When I was assigned him, I thought, I'm not sure we have anything in common. Why would I be assigned to this particular mentor? But as we got into our conversations over the years, so wonderful, such rich conversation. I would also add to the conversation here that you never know what a mentor is going to offer to you, and that it's really important to maybe have different mentors for different kinds of things in your life. And it's always appropriate to have more than one, and to know that many people have things to offer to your experience. So
that's great, Asani.
Yeah.
I will say my first experience with being given a mentor was actually not a good one. I was part of a program for women's leadership, and I was assigned a mentor because at the time I was a student, and met with this person and talked about my interest, who she was. And at the end of our meeting, she said to me, people like you don't need mentors. And I was so taken back. I was like, what does that mean? The people like me, women, Black women, because I was an international student. International students, what do you mean? And I will say that really put me off for a long time because I was very confused and hurt. But years since, I have found mentors in the most unexpected places. As Asani was saying, people, and also Susan was pointing to people who were not in my field, people who were in the field, professors whose style I liked, whose research I was interested in, people who voluntarily took me under their wings and taught me things. But it was really that for me, growing beyond that first, what I felt was a major stumble, but it also helped me in learning when I had the opportunity to be a mentor to other people, to sit with them and listen to them and not say people like you don't need mentors.
Everyone needs mentors, Yinka, even those of us who are more senior in our careers.
Oh, absolutely.
I would almost argue, maybe selfishly, that people further along in their careers need them as much or more than anyone else, probably just as much as. And I think those formal mentoring programs can be successful when you're assigned, but I think Yinka's right. Sometimes they can backfire if it's not the right combination of people. I think those mentors and those formal mentoring programs, the mentors need to be trained and they need to have certain skill sets. I think you just can't randomly select older faculty members because older doesn't mean wise and older doesn't guarantee a good mentor. In fact, I have mentors who are younger than me. I have mentors who are young. Some of my mentors are younger than me by more than a decade. There are people mentoring me who are important in my life who are much younger than I am, because I have much to learn from them. And I had the same, and I echo also, I think what Susan said about a mentor outside of the department can be really valuable in your institution, because depending on what department you go into, not everyone in your department is going to share your departmental or institutional history, but
Absolutely.
someone outside doesn't have that vested interest or may not tell you all of the, I don't want to say dirt, but all of the turmoil that may have happened 10 or 15 years ago in your department, but someone in a auxiliary department might tell you everything, the lay of the land, and you won't step in a landmine. I currently mentor through a formal mentoring system, someone in kinesiology here at Boise State, and he's a lovely individual. And I think we'll have a friendship probably for years based on that first year mentoring experience. But I really value my mentors, and I have many of them. And honestly, some of them probably don't even know that I consider them a mentor, but I go to them repeatedly for advice. I thank them profusely for their time and their talent. And if they've been to any of my presentations, they should know that I think of them as a mentor because they've seen their name on a screen.
I want to jump in, Eric, on the formal mentoring piece that Yinka mentioned as well. I've done a little bit of research over the years in gender differences in STEM fields, which of course psychology is a STEM field, although my research was mostly not psych. But one of the things I found in our own research and also in the studies I was reading is that formal mentoring programs actually do increase the likelihood of people from underrepresented groups to have a mentor. Certainly they can backfire, but places that don't have formal mentoring programs, more people fall through the cracks. So it is actually considered a best practice as a start to have a formal mentoring program with the full understanding that they're not all going to work. I love the idea of training people, but having that, so at least you've got somebody to start off with as you build your and I think you shouldn't just have one mentor, as we've all been alluding to.
Yeah.
I also think our professional organizations are a really important place to find mentors. The Society for the Teaching of Psychology is a place where I have found many mentors, but in my case, informally. STP also has a formal mentoring program where you can sign up and be assigned a mentor within STP at a different institution. And I think whether or not you're just showing up at one of the annual conferences on teaching and meeting people that way informally, or whether you're signing up to get a mentor through STP, I think that's another way. I also think reaching out, if you go to a conference, go up to somebody whose work you find interesting. That's how I met Yinka. She gave a fabulous presentation at the United Nations, and I went up and introduced myself after. So I think these are ways in which we can make connections beyond our department.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to remember, Susan, you were my mentor in my undergraduate years at Seton Hall University. I'm trying to recall how exactly that happened. Did I just show up in your office one day?
You did.
And so that was...
I was a brand new faculty member and you were in your senior year. And
And
you were
I
my first honor student, and you showed up in my office.
Yeah, I think I was just like, there's this new faculty member that's here. I'm just going to go and have a conversation. And that's how it began. So I think to your point, Susan, that you're mentioning, just going up to someone, whomever it is, whose work you admire, that you want to get to know, can be a great way to start a mentoring relationship.
Absolutely.
I'm also mulling over a little bit. What do we mean by mentors and mentoring anyway? Like, what does that mean exactly? And for me, when I think about that, it means a person who can offer some practical advice around a particular area, who has some degree of wisdom around a topic or some other aspect of my work life I'd like to know more about, and who's willing to give some guidance along the way. And so from that perspective then, because I was sitting here thinking to myself, do I have a mentor right now? Oh God, I don't know if I have a mentor. But in fact, with that definition in mind, I have many mentors. And Eric, to your point, as you were saying, it could be people that are my peers in terms of similar age. It could be people that are younger, for example. Many of these people that I'm thinking about now, I didn't formally ask them, can you be my mentor? They just are in a way. They probably don't know it, as you were saying as well. And so it's about, I think, once again, the community of mentors that we might have in our lives.
And I would also add that some of those mentors are not in the field. They may be in different fields. And so learning from them, gaining their wisdom, getting advice, getting suggestions, recommendations from other fields, other parts of psychology can just, I find, enrichen the way I think, the way I interact with others.
And I'm sitting here trying to think about, so I consider Susan a mentor of mine. I do, as well as a dear friend. And so
I consider you a mentor as well. So
right back at you. And so I'm trying to, and not that this is an important distinction, but I'm trying to differentiate. Is there a difference between someone who is an important, valued friend and someone who's a mentor? Like, for example, could someone be a mentor and not be a friend? Because, and again, I think that maybe that's just an academic, goofy thing to think about, but for me, she's both. And I know we're talking about like she's not here, but she is. But I trust her judgment as a friend, but I trust her judgment as a mentor. And we've actually had really important conversations in the past where we've talked about topics that I hadn't thought through, that now I think about very deeply, that I valued that a friend would talk to me about, but I valued that a mentor would talk to me about.
I think we have mentors with whom we socialize and mentors with whom we don't socialize for just various reasons.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the difference. Maybe with your friends, there's an added layer of that you socialize, but with a mentor, there may not be any socialization beyond work. Maybe that's the differential variable between those two concepts.
I want to add an important caveat here because we're all talking about mentors and mentoring situations that were very positive for us. Yinka mentioned, of course, one that was not. But I think sometimes you go up to somebody to try to get them to be your mentor and they say no, or you send them an email and they don't answer for many different reasons. They're just too busy, or they mean to, and it slips down their email list. And so I think if you're going to ask someone to be your mentor and it doesn't work out the first time, don't give up. It's most likely not personal, and there are lots of other options out there. So I can think of cases where I looked to someone as a mentor and it didn't end up working out. Here we are with our self-selected stories of the mentorships that were great. And I think that's really important to acknowledge.
Timing.
And I wonder too about how we've gone about navigating those mentoring relationships that were not working very well, and you recognize it. And how all have you negotiated that? If you've been in a mentoring relationship and you're not getting what you need, or how have you exited that mentoring relationship? You let it fade into the night, you say something specific, or Yinka, what do you think?
Yeah, I've just, with the first one, like I walked away. When the few times since where it hasn't worked, I've just let it peter out.
Same. I had a situation with a professor in a different department. It just felt awkward for various reasons. And I just for various reasons, I just stopped, slowly responded to emails more and more slowly, declined invitations for coffee, and just let it die. Without causing a stir, because I was untenured at the time.
And I think as an academic, I think we should all expect some support from a supervisor. It may not be mentoring, but it should be some meaningful feedback, at least on an annual or semi-annual basis. If you were clinician or a counselor, depending on the scenario, if you're working for someone else, you should expect feedback from a supervisor, or you'd be getting feedback from clients and patients. And I think that mentor takes that extra step and has that personal touch, and it, has that empathy for your situation that you don't always get. And I think back, I was thinking about when Susan was talking about, you may not get the reaction you want. There was a time in my life where I was going through a divorce, and I'm sure I wasn't very open to email requests and students coming and asking me, can I work with you as an RA or a TA? And if I were to go back and look at requests during that rough spot in my life, I probably wasn't a good mentor. And it had nothing to do with the validity of great requests coming from awesome people wanting that kind of support.
You're pointing out a very important point, that professors are people too.
Imagine that.
That's the rumor I've heard. Yeah.
And I actually just want to kind of touch on something that Eric mentioned about supervisory relationships, because I think as a clinician, there are times when we're supervising someone, but then when that relationship ends, we might continue the relationship in another form. And so I've had experiences with that, both as a supervisor and a supervisee, where the relationship has carried outside the supervision context and has become a mentor. It's become a friendship in some cases, and in other cases, it's become a mentorship, where that's the person I go to, not only, or they come to me, not only for clinical things, but for professional things as well. And that's another blossoming of the relationship, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I hope in another episode we can talk about that, because I don't live in that world, but I sure would like to learn more about that world.